Back here live, the W Show Radio Row, Los Angeles. I'll tell you, we've had some pretty exciting guests, some great people who come by. We have one person that's coming by to talk to us, Dr. Jerome Adams, the 20th Surgeon General of the United States. Sir, appreciate you for joining us on the show today.
Hey, it's been fun. It's great to be here. It's great to have conversations about sports, but also the overlap between sports and life and health.
Yeah. And you're to talk about more and more people that are struggling with mental health and the ways that they're able to get help, which is the Hall of Fame Health. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, we've got a relationship with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm one of their board members and ambassadors, along with people like Brian Dawkins and Charles Haley and so many other folks out there who are trying to help people understand that it's okay not to be okay. And we're focused on three main things. Number one, we're focused on awareness and stigma, because too many people out there feel like it's a sign of weakness to admit that you need help. Stigma kills more people than heroin. It does. So telling these stories helps lower stigma when you see a Calvin Johnson out there talking about how he's struggled with pain issues throughout his career. We're looking at access. So we go around the country and we find the top-notch institutions where the CEO of the Fortune 500 companies go. And we want to make sure people are getting good care, because if we say we need help, we still don't know how to get help.
Right.
So you can go to hofhealth.com and we can connect you with care. The third third pillar here is affordability. So through fundrecovery.org, we're giving scholarships to NFL players and their families. If people think you're an NFL player, you're fine. No, actually, there's a lot of NFL players who aren't doing fine financially. But we're expanding it to people who aren't part of the NFL family, because we want everyone to be able to access high quality care. So awareness and stigma, access and affordability are really key to what we're working on with the Hall of Fame.
Now, with that awareness and stigma, how much of that is just the players, the athletes that are just like, no, I'm good, I don't want to talk about it because of what people may think of that person?
Well, you know that there's toxic masculinity that's part of it. There's part of the Black culture.
That's true.
You know, and the funny thing is, these things in many cases were survival mechanisms back in the day. Back when our ancestors were slaves, you didn't have a choice but to pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right.
Otherwise, they were going to whip you. And I hate to get real here, but you know, these mentalities have become now harmful to us, because now we're in a situation where we can get help, but people don't want to admit that they need help. But make no mistake about it, the NFL just reflects what's going on in our larger society. Prior to the pandemic, a person was dying an opioid overdose every 11 minutes. What many people don't know is that while I was standing there in the White House talking to America about COVID, my brother was sitting in a jail cell about 25 miles away due to crimes he committed to support his addiction. So it's very personal to me that we normalize substance misuse and recovery, but that we also prevent it in the first place. His story started with unrecognized anxiety and depression. He self-medicated with tobacco and alcohol, which is too easy to find in Black communities, marijuana, which now is everywhere and everyone thinks is perfectly fine, and not bashing recreational use, but I mean, I wouldn't tell you to go out and drink a 40 before you go to work.
Right.
I wouldn't tell you to go out and smoke a cigar before you go out and try to play basketball. I'm not going to go out there and tell you just because marijuana is legal that it's something that's healthy for you to do, especially to excess. But then my brother went to a party and someone gave him a pill, and he says it's like a light switch went off, and that light switch sent him down the pathway of addiction. He's been struggling with it ever since.
Yeah, no, addiction is definitely tough. Talk about your upbringing. Wow, I'm just looking you up on here. You grew up in Maryland?
I grew up in rural southern Maryland. So the irony is I grew up on an old tobacco farm, and then I became the guy who's the warning label on the side of the pack of cigarettes. And, you know, I try to bring my authentic self to the table. People would see me and Tony Fauci, and Tony Fauci was the professor. You know, if he's saying something, when he's up there, he sounds like a professor.
Right.
And I would always talk to people as if I was talking to my mother, because my mother probably was watching. She'd be calling me up sometimes afterwards, like, I don't know what the heck you just said. You need to say it differently next time. But I grew up in the country. I grew up poor. We relied on government assistance programs. And true story, I have family members and friends disown me for wanting to work for the last administration.
Yeah.
But I've always said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
And so you, I can't believe that people would not want someone who brings the Black experience, who can talk about being poor, being on government assistance programs. They're advising an administration. You don't get to pick when you're Surgeon General.
Of course.
You get asked to serve, and I read the Bible. There's people in the Bible who Moses didn't want to didn't want to step up. Noah didn't want to step up. God doesn't put you where you're going to be comfortable. He puts you where you can be of service.
Of course.
That's great. I do too.
Can you talk about the excess part that you alluded to earlier? I think that's the point we probably need to drive home about, these different substances and just really vices in general. Talk about that excess, that area.
Well, there's access to vice, and then there's access to treatment. And we have far too much access to vice out there. And, make no mistake about it, I like to have a glass of wine every now and then. I like to relax. We want to help people understand that there's a difference between hanging out socially, doing it with your friends, and when you're doing it because you need it to make you feel normal.
To get to the next day.
Exactly. That's when it's a problem, and that's when you need to acknowledge that you should ask for help. And so then on the access to treatment, particularly in Black and brown communities and poor communities, we know that there is not access to treatment. So the most heartbreaking thing is actually getting someone to the point where they say they want help and then they can't get it. And I've been through that with my own brother. Folks who are in that cycle of addiction, sometimes you go and they're like, nah, I'm good. I don't need help. And you're praying as a family member or a friend that they'll hit that point where they say, okay, I'm ready. And nothing is more heartbreaking than when they finally say, I'm ready. And you're like, all right, it's going to be 6 months before we can get you into treatment. 6 months is too late for our treatment people.
Yeah, and I know you said that being in the administration and being Black, right?
Black man in the White House
made people more receptive. Now, do you feel like working with the athletes and looking like them, they're more open to talking to you?
Oh, absolutely. The athletes have been fantastic because when you talk to them, they're regular people. So many of them come from, again, inner city neighborhoods or rural communities or access poor communities. I talk to them about my family, talk to them about my mother, talk to them about my kids. I'm sitting there talking with LeVar Arrington about my, I got 17, a 16, and a 12-year-old right now, and I'm struggling just like everybody else, trying to keep them away from the e-cigarettes, trying to help them understand that just because everybody else is out there smoking marijuana and eating gummies, that doesn't mean it's okay for you to do that. And that's the real challenge. And I harp on this because I really do worry that this normalization of marijuana use is going to negatively impact young Black and brown people. Again, legal and okay for adults is not the same thing as saying it's okay and advisable for kids. And you see, we've already got a liquor store and a smoke shop on every corner in every Black community. I don't know how opening up a marijuana dispensary right next to them, because they aren't opening them up in the suburbs where I live. That's not where they're opening up. I don't know how that's going to help our social justice issue. They said they were going to give licenses to Black and brown people. Look, they're not getting the licenses. It's big marijuana, just like it was big tobacco. So I'm really worried about that because we don't want another generation of the opioid epidemic all over again, where everyone said it was fine, it was safe, and then you get a generation of people using these products, and then you're trying to dig yourself out of the hole.
Now, there's a game on Sunday. I know you're a football guy, man. Who you have? Is it going to be Bengals way or is it Rams?
So I live in Indianapolis right now. I'm a postseason ticket holder.
Okay.
And being in the Midwest, I got to support Cincinnati. And many people, if you follow me on Twitter at Jerome Adams ND, you see that I actually got to hang out with and meet Joe Burrow when he won the Heisman Trophy.
Really?
So I got a picture of me and him on Twitter, and the reason why I like Joe Burrow is because he's one of the quarterbacks that came out most strongly and most early in favor of vaccinations. He said vaccinations are a competitive advantage for my team. And I want the Black community to understand that vaccinations are a competitive advantage for you being able to successfully live your life. Vaccine hesitancy is to my opinion, and I'm gonna just put it out there. I think it's a crime being perpetuated against Black communities. When you look at the number of Black and brown people who died throughout the pandemic, and there are people out there feeding that hesitancy. My job as Surgeon General and afterwards is to help people understand how to be healthy. One of the number one ways you can be healthy right now is to get vaccinated and get boosted. One of the other top ways you can be healthy is to recognize you can't be healthy physically if you're not healthy mentally. So if you need help, you can go to, again, hofhealth.com or 866-404-HOFH for Hall of Fame Health. And again, if you need help funding your treatment, you can go to fundrecovery.org.
That's Dr. Jerome Adams, sir. We appreciate you coming on with us today.
Hey, anytime. Great conversation, and I hope to come back again.
All right, thank you.
Definitely.
We'll be back here live from Radio Row with more guests.